This is going to be an exciting one, folks. Say hello to the Ego SNT2416. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the CB View. Today we're taking a look at the Ego SNT2416 Snowblower. We got some nice footage, some interesting stuff to show off today. Let's dig into it. All right. Without further ado, let's start breaking this down together. First, I got some B-roll. It's going to be rolling in the background for my GoPro. Just going through the general unboxing here. Figure we might as well set the mood by letting you know exactly what you should expect when you're unboxing your own Ego Snowblower. Needless to say, it's not that complicated, but I think I made it more complicated than it needed to be. I think for most people, you might need 20 minutes. I probably needed a little bit more than 20 minutes, but I could have had it done in 10 if I would have just maybe screwed my head on straight that morning. But it doesn't take that long to set up. It's pretty simple. It's essentially just getting the Snowchute hooked on to the top of it. It's just one single bolt with a fastener. And then you also have the height adjustable controls, which is exactly where you'd be holding those handles. And that's just an easy height adjustable function that you can deal with on the fly. Although I recommend having two people for it at a minimum. Anyway, with the niceties out of the way, let's talk about the snowblower itself. When we look at the builds itself of the Ego SNT2416, we're basically seeing a mix of steel and long-lasting polymer. It's supposed to be like a ballistic polymer from everything that I've read. If you've ever dealt with Ego equipment in general, then you definitely know what I'm talking about, where some of it will be with this like polymer plastic and the rest of it will be metal, depending on the application and if it's actually necessary. Moving on from that then, let's talk a little bit about the overall usability of the device. It's extremely user-friendly, if we're being honest here. You have your controls for the wheels, and then you have your controls for the auger with either handle on your left or right. And then with that, you also have a speed adjustable handle that can put you in reverse or forward at a variable speed. And then on the right, you can adjust the speed of the auger depending on essentially the workload that you're putting the snowblower under. Along with that as well, you got two buttons that are going to be dead center, just near the center at least. You have one set that's going to be for your LED lights. Two of those LED lights are located right at the top where you actually hold the handles, and two more LEDs are located where you insert the batteries into the snowblower. And when we're talking about performance with this Ego Snowblower, a lot of what it comes down to is it going to last a long time and will it chuck the snow? Those are just very basic questions. First, will it chuck the snow? I only had a light snowfall to be able to test this with, but with that light snowfall and having a little bit of extra debris, some leaves, some plants, some whatever, it definitely seems like it chucks. I'm not concerned about that. Just with having basically 1.5 inches on the ground and getting it out of the way, it handled it with ease. And I didn't even mess with the auger settings in the first place. So I was haphazardly or without paying much attention taking care of my driveway, which you can see in the footage right here. But I don't expect for this to be something that I have to stress over going forward. If I have really heavy snowfall, yeah, I'm going to turn up the auger. But the power that this device has, I do fully believe that it's going to chuck it that full 50. And that's an important claim on Ego's part, because if you can't chuck snow, just don't advertise it on your equipment. Anyway, if there's a situation where I can't actually throw snow for the full distance and it's with a snowfall that's not super wet or something, I'd be more than happy to make an update video and say, hey, it failed me when I needed it most. But if we're being honest about it, gas snowblowers have definitely failed me more often than most electronics. I guess we could put it that way. So I highly recommend going the electric route if you're like me and you enjoy a no drama solution to your yard care, driveway care, whatever that looks like. Another brief piece to touch on would probably be just the efficiency of the unit itself. I feel like with the two 10 amp hour batteries, based on my personal experience with having the auger at a little bit below half speed and then taking care of my driveway and then just going down the sidewalk and down the corner with some very basic settings enabled, I definitely did not pull more than 20% of the battery. So for a lot of people, what that's going to mean is if you get this unit and you have two 10 amp hour batteries, you're going to be able to take care of your driveway, your neighbor's driveway. You're going to be able to go around the corner as well. I don't feel like a lot is going to hold you back. I think you're just going to be able to take care of your side of the block and maybe even the gift that gets left at the driveway, depending on where you live. I think that this snowblower is extremely capable compared to a lot of other options that are out there, just because of the fact that when you introduce the dual power of the 10 amp hour batteries running in parallel, you get a lot of the responsiveness and strength that you would expect and need from a gas snowblower, but you're getting it in a more refined package where the power is immediately available to you because it's electric, versus in the world of gas, it's a little bit more dependent. It's very dependent on workload too. I think one thing I've noticed is that one of the funny parts about having an electric snowblower is this funny whirring sound that it makes. It's the same thing you'd expect with maybe an electric vehicle, but if you're new to it, you're new to it. So if you're like me, you hear it and you're like, that's pretty hilarious. Quick little clip of that for you. Yeah, so it's pretty high pitched. It's funny to listen to. It's not bothersome when you're actually using the snowblower. I think it just catches you by surprise if you're a first time user like I am. But the experience of that versus having a gas snowblower that you just start up that's effectively blaring in your ear, you're going to be pretty happy with the electric whirring versus a gas motor without any sort of silencing. When it comes to the usability of the product, I think one of my favorite things just has to be the Snowchute, because the Snowchute is controlled 100% by a joystick. It's great. You press the button to push it forward and backward for if you want to point the chute down or if you want to point it up. And other than that, just left to right, depending on where you want to point it. But it's extremely satisfying and fun to play with, and take that from someone who spent a fair amount of time in arcades as a kid. I think that a lot of people will get a simple joy out of using the Snowchute, just redirecting it. And when you couple that with the fact that you do have the turning triggers that are beneath the handles, so when you have like the motor for the wheels as well as the auger engaged, you can grab the handles that are underneath to either turn to the right or turn to the left. And you can effectively continue to keep the snowblower in function, in action, and moving, whether that's the auger or physically, and then still control where the snow is going while you're turning. Let's talk about a couple of these downsides that you might experience. When I look at the chute for the unit, I don't feel like it's going to be hospitable when I deal with slush. I think based on the size of it, that there's going to be a little bit too much wet and dense snow that gets stuck on the inside, and then I'm going to have to use the included plastic tool from Ego to clear that out briefly so that the snowblower can continue to function. I'm not going to say that's a big deal. I think that this is an expectation that you can have with a lot of snowblowers in general. You're going to have to deal with some slush, some slurries, it's not always just going to be the powdery stuff or even the packy stuff that's strongly frozen. Beyond that, I don't have any really major criticisms. I think that it's a very premium product. I definitely think that it's a little bit on the expensive side, but depending on who you are and depending on what you're up to, if you're like me and you're actually invested into the Ego ecosystem, it just makes sense. You already have the lawnmower, you've got the leaf blower, you've got the chainsaw, you've got the weed whacker, and maybe 5 other things, depending on who you are. I think that there's a lot of value in building up this type of ecosystem, because if you do it over a stretched period of time, then the value just makes itself known super quickly. For me, I started collecting or just obtaining these Ego devices about 2 years ago. So while I'm getting toward the end of some of my battery warranties, I definitely haven't put them through enough charge release cycles to say that the batteries are going to fail anytime soon whatsoever. If we're talking about doomsday worst case scenario and my 10 amp hour batteries are completely used up, I do still have a 3.5 amp hour and a 5 amp hour. I can still take those batteries and I can put them into the snowblower. They're still 56 volt batteries. They're still going to function. It's just that I'm probably not going to get a long runtime necessarily. But in a pinch, it all works, and that's what the value proposition of the Ego ecosystem really is. Yeah, I might not want to carry a 10 amp hour battery on my leaf blower because my arm's going to get really tired compared to the 3.5, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that you have the option. But what do we really think here? Is it a buy? Yeah, it's a buy, but it depends on who you are. I think for someone like me, it's a really easy decision because I'm already invested into the Ego ecosystem. I've already got 3 batteries that are on hand. I've already got 3 different devices that I use to maintain my yard with. This was the next logical step for me. I think for everyone else, it's a question of, will you fully invest yourself into the ecosystem, or are you just interested in kind of testing the waters? I think it's a harder sell for anyone who's testing the waters, personally. But at the same time, if you're willing to spend $1,700, probably closer to $1,800 with tax on a really nice snowblower like this, I'm going to assume that you're also pretty bought into the idea of using the rest of these products as well. For me, this product gets an absolute recommendation. I look forward to testing it out when the heavier snowfall hits, but in the meantime, with what I've seen so far and what I've been able to test, I'm definitely not worried about the heavy, dense, wet, whatever snowfall that's yet to come. I think we're going to be okay. But I'll keep you guys updated on that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.